So at 5:01, we will call to order the September 2nd meeting of the Quality of Life Committee. And if we can call the roll. Jennifer, are you doing that?
I am.
Fabulous.
Councillor Chris Rivera.
Here.
Councillor Jamie Cassett Sanchez.
Here.
Councillor Michael Garcia.
Present.
Councilwoman Renee Villarreal.
Present.
And Councillor Carol Romero Worth.
I'm here. And now we go to approval of the agenda.
Move for approval. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Can we call the roll again?
Councillor Chris Rivera.
Yes.
Councillor Michael Garcia.
Yes.
Councilwoman Renee Villarreal.
Yes.
Councillor Jamie Cassett Sanchez.
Yes.
And Chair Carol Romero Worth.
Yes. All right, and with that, we'll go to the consent agenda. Are there any items that the committee would like to discuss, or is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve. Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. If we can call the roll again.
Councillor Jamie Cassett Sanchez.
Yes.
Councilwoman Renee Villarreal.
Yes.
Councillor Michael Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Chris Rivera.
Yes.
And Chair Carol Romero Worth.
Yes. All right, and then we have approval of the minutes from August 19th. Are there changes from staff? Jennifer, any changes?
Oh, I'm so sorry. No, there's no changes.
Okay. Changes from the committee?
Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Jennifer, one more time, call the roll, please.
Councilwoman Renee Villarreal.
Yes.
Councillor Michael Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Chris Rivera.
Yes.
Councillor Jamie Cassett Sanchez.
Yes.
And Chair Carol Romero Worth.
Yes. All right, we're zipping right along here. We have two presentations tonight. And is Kira with us?
Oh, she just joined the room. Let me add.
Okay. Fabulous.
There we go.
Kira, are you with us? I don't see her up. Oh, there she is. Kira, we're ready for you. Are you ready, or would you like me to go to the next item and come back? You're muted.
Sorry, hello.
Hi.
Is Rachel O'Connor from the county in the room yet?
I do not see her, so we could go to the second presentation and then come back if that's okay.
That is fine.
Okay, so the second presentation is about the Santa Fe Public Library response to community needs, and we have Maria Sanchez Tucker, our library division director, with us, coming live from the main library, I think. Is that right? The reading room, if I'm correct.
That's correct. It's a virtual background right now, but that is my background.
Well, it looks like it actually looks like you're there, so that's very
I know
cool.
I get a lot of compliments on this picture because it's such a beautiful room.
Yeah, maybe you should send me a copy of that. Maybe I'll use it too if you'll share.
Absolutely. We would love to promote the library. I'll send it to you.
All right, fabulous. All right, so without any further ado, do you want to do, and I don't know if you have a presentation or if you're just.
I do. I'm going to share my screen if
Perfect.
that's okay. Okay.
Great, thank you.
And are you able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm going to move this over. Okay. So, well, thank you so much, Chair and counselors. I'm really pleased to be with you this evening to present on the work that the Santa Fe Public Library has been doing to respond to community need. So I'd like to just share with you a few of our performance measures that public libraries use to measure some of the services they provide to the community and their use. And these numbers are really attributed to our dedicated and knowledgeable staff. They've worked very hard, especially during these difficult times, to provide excellent service to the public. And so I'm not going to spend too much time on the numbers, but I just wanted to point out that we do have 3 library branches, and they serve distinct geographic locations and community users. And so by having the 3 locations, it really helps with transportation barriers for people to get to their local library. And so in 2019 and 2020, we welcomed 445,460 visitors to our libraries, which is pretty astonishing considering that we closed for several months in March. You know, usually we're closer to 700,000 per year, which is really a tremendous amount of use. And we answered 69,409 reference and information questions. And we get questions from everything to how to use a computer, how to use audiobooks, questions about accounts, to questions about needing help with finding job applications or resumes. So we answer questions related to anything and information within the community. We have 57,995 registered users of the library, and we circulated a total of 664,000 items, which is really phenomenal. And our public computer sessions were 89,111, and we had a huge jump in our Wi-Fi sessions. And that's really attributed to 2 things. We made sure that our Wi-Fi was on and accessible as we closed our library buildings, but we're also using a new system to track sessions. And so there was quite a big difference between last year and this year, but regardless, Wi-Fi use is up at our libraries. And then we provided 602 public programs with over 13,000 attendees. And so on average right now, we're circulating 3,500 items at the curbside, which translates to about 146 people served each week. So that's a tremendous amount of use. In August, our librarians answered 1,700 reference questions through phone and email. So I'm not going to go over these numbers because we just talked about them, but they'll be available in case you want to look at these further comparisons from 1819 to 1920. But really the things I want to point out was that most of our numbers really were not impacted terribly, other than visitation and reference questions, because we didn't have as much foot traffic coming in the door. But we maintained our circulation. It was only 12% less because we ramped up our digital use. And we still continued Wi-Fi sessions. Our computer sessions were up, and our overall program attendance and numbers were up for the year. So this is our current organizational chart, and we do have several key manager positions that are vacant. Did you have a question? Several key manager positions that are vacant. Currently, we have 3 branch manager positions vacant and our systems administrator. And we also have 2 librarians leave the Southside Library, and we'll have several other retirements and resignations coming up with our library techs. And so prior to COVID happening, we were working on filling some of these positions and working with HR to adjust some of our classifications that changed during the comp and class study, just to make sure that our roles and the work that we're doing in the library best fits the needs of the library system. So we completed a library planning study in December of 2019. I came on board at the end of August and was able to work through the finalization of this planning study. But as you might remember, some of the key recommendations were outreach, multicultural and bilingual collections and programming. We really need to improve library technology, hire and retain key library leadership, create a strategic plan, market the library, focus on education with early childhood, GED, digital literacy, and developing generational programs for diverse age groups. Working on the Teen Center, which is a wonderful project that we really want to incorporate a Southside campus and work together with the Teen Center. Continue to develop community partners, improve and maintain our facilities. And then a key project is to plan for a new main library at Midtown. And of course, working on planning for diversifying our funding sources, looking for grants, also looking at ways that we can ensure that we have more sustainable funding for the library system into the future. So all of these things we were starting to work on, and then COVID took place, and we had to shift gears a little bit. But in January, we convened a meeting with our staff, and we were beginning the process to work on a strategic plan. We brought in an outside facilitator to work with staff to give them the opportunity to look at how they wanted to work within the library system, how they wanted to implement the key recommendations from the planning study, determine a short-term strategic direction for the library, and identifying core services. So working with staff, we developed a 2021 strategic plan that focused on our core services of technology, programming, well-maintained collection, resources and connections, facilities, individual engagement, and then creating more programs for adult services in the community. We do really well with creating programs for youth. That's one of our strong points and something that we really do. But one of the areas that staff wanted to really increase was programs for adults and intergenerational programs. And so we're a little behind on planning those programs because we went into COVID response mode, but we're still focusing on creating diverse programming and collections for our community. So our COVID response was really quite astonishing, I think, when you think what we did in such a short amount of time. We closed our library facilities to the public on March 17th, and we made a quick pivot to digital services. We had started working on ramping up our digital collections, looking at how we can diversify what we do online, but we had to really shift quickly. And so our librarians began working from home to create email and online reference services. We created online story times and programs. We planned an entire virtual summer reading program. We shifted budgets and collections focus to provide greater digital content. Library staff stepped up, and many provided coverage as the shelter staff at Midtown Shelter. And they also worked in the land use office. So we contributed in a variety of ways. We worked with IT to ensure that our Wi-Fi remained accessible. We added some easy passwords that we made sure were accessible to the public. So in case people came after hours, they would be able to access Wi-Fi. We recently added curbside printing because that was a need in the community. People needed to collect printouts. So we just started that. And we're continuing to develop our community partnerships. And so if you wonder what quarantine books look like, here's a picture. So we began curbside service on May 20th, and we had an influx of returned materials once we opened our book drops. And it was a deluge of many materials that were returned to us. And so what we've had to do was quarantine the books. We started for a week quarantine because we were waiting for results from a study on how long the virus might live on library materials. And so we've changed to 3 days quarantine now. So when somebody returns their book, library staff puts it in the quarantine holding room, which is the southwest room. So it doesn't look quite like my background right now, but it's held in quarantine and then put back on the shelf and checked in after that. But we have checked out 52,065 materials since May, and 81,262 digital items have been checked out. And so you can see there's been a tremendous need for library materials, tremendous response from the community, and a lot of shift towards digital use. We made sure to implement safe procedures for library curbside services to protect our staff and patrons. And we're also serving as a place for information distribution, such as census materials, the Santa Fe Literary Guide, masks, and other community organizations. If they need us to distribute materials, we can be a place for that. We'll be working with the DAR to distribute some Constitution Week materials as well. And the Southside Library will also be an early voting location and a general voting site. It was for the primaries. And so it was requested from some members in the community to use that space to make voting more accessible in the community. And so we'd like to work with other organizations to host voter information and registration events, and we'll be putting voter information on our website as well. So I talked about our success with working with youth and growing young minds. And so I just want to tell you a little bit about some of the successful programs we've undertaken recently. As I mentioned, we had a virtual summer reading program. We purchased a software where you could track reading, and it's a really fun program. It's called Beanstack. And so families are able to register their children, or you can register a class or a group, and you can track the books you read and you can track the minutes, and then you can earn prizes. And so since COVID changed a little bit how we do our summer reading program and our prize distribution, we use the virtual session. So we had 513 readers enrolled in our program. We had an adult and teen program as well this year. And you can see that adults read 109,000 minutes, teens read 26,000 minutes, and kids read 137,000 minutes. And so it's just a really neat program because we can track minutes and track what schools kids are registering from, so we can do more targeted outreach. We can track what libraries they're connected with. And so I think this was our first year doing a virtual. And so it did have some challenges because of outreach and people not knowing how to use it. But I think we have some ideas on how to make the system work for us even better. And we're going to use the program to do 1,000 books before kindergarten and really promote reading to our youngest children in the community. And after they read a certain amount of books, they can come to the library and get a free book and add to their own personal collection at home, which is really important to have books at home for children to read. So here is a screenshot of our YouTube channel. Librarians did online story time. They created, we had summer reading programs online. And so, COVID posed a challenge in that we had to market and get the word out about these programs and availability, but also provided some flexibility for working families that could participate in watching these programs together anytime they wanted to. And so all of these are online if you want to look at it. It's just the Santa Fe Public Library YouTube channel. We added our bilingual books and babies program online and just had a variety of programs each week. We also had a music and movement with one of our librarians. So we had a really fun summer, even if it was virtually. Here's pictures of some young patrons with some of their fairy houses that they made. We had weekly grab and go craft kits. We also partnered with the Museum of International Folk Art, and they provided some craft kits as well. And so people really were thankful for these activities for their kids to do at home, and we'll continue to do more. We also recently had a mini Zozobra craft kit that came with a free book for the first 200 people that picked up their Zozobra kits. So our librarians are still contributing to creation and providing fun for families at their library. And we're just working on promoting and getting the word out. Another really, I think, innovative and fun partnership that we started this year was a program called Math Magical Times. And this was a program where our youth librarian read a book that was centered on math. And then they would do a Zoom session at the end of the week. And Math Amigos provided a kit that had all of the materials required to do any of the activities. And so it was a math-focused summer reading program, and to try to prevent summer slide for math skills. And I think it was very successful, and it was a fun program. It was something new to try. Math Amigos were great partners. And we, Michelle Reich, one of our youth librarians, is working on a middle school math program to start this year to get the kids who might need some help going into high school with their math skills. So more to come on that program. Another great program that we have been selected for, this is a national program, and it's called Building a National Network of Museums and Libraries for School Readiness. And Santa Fe Public Library and the Santa Fe Children's Museum were selected to participate in this project. It's a National Institute of Museum and Library Services grant-funded project, and the lead on it is the Boston Children's Museum. And so really the goal is to strengthen serving children and families and helping the library and the museum work together to reach out to diverse groups, diverse families, and support children in their opportunity as they enter into school. And so I think this is just a really fabulous program that we were selected to participate, and it's going to really provide some capacity for our staff, but also with developing partnerships to support early childhood education in Santa Fe. And so here are a few points about the project, and more to come on this as well. I think the Santa Fe Children's Museum and I would like to present to the full council at some point when we get the program up and running. But it's really about fostering family engagement and learning. It's going to give us some training and some tools to make sure that we're working collaboratively and that we're providing services to the kids who need it the most. And these were the communities that were selected: Richmond, Virginia, Charleston, South Carolina, Santa Fe, New Mexico, Coralville, Iowa, Gulfport, Mississippi, and then Boston, Massachusetts. And we were selected through an interview process, but I think our geography and our demographics made us a good candidate. Also, our strong programming for early childhood education made us a good candidate for this project. And some of the grants that we've received so far, I wrote a grant to the National Endowment for the Arts to sponsor Big Read. And so this will take place this spring. We were going to kick it off this fall, but COVID changed plans a little bit. And so throughout the spring, so we can have a chance to work with our school district and make sure that the most kids and community is involved. We're working with a variety of community partners to hold programming throughout the spring on reading Luis Alberto Urrea's Into the Beautiful North. And I think we can have good conversations about immigration and issues affecting our community, and just have a really great time reading one book, discussing it, and using literature as a way to connect with each other. And knowing that we were facing an emergency with our budget, I applied to the New Mexico Humanities Council, and we were awarded $7,500 to support a librarian's salary, knowing that we are facing our budget issues. So those were a couple of grants that we have been awarded this year. And then, of course, our wonderful patrons, they always provide so much thankfulness to all of the work we do. Our staff, they're tremendous. Like I mentioned, some of the numbers, our curbside service is really time and labor intensive. It's very tiring. And so this was nice to see on the Santa Fe bulletin board, and a lot of the comments talked about how grateful people were to have books during this time for escape, and just really grateful that the library has instituted this service. We've also received, baked goods and homemade masks and donations to the Friends of the Santa Fe Public Library. And really, the Friends of the Santa Fe Public Library make our programming possible because they provide funding for most of our programming that takes place. So some of the next steps that we need to work on are readying our facilities for opening, to ensure that we have proper social distancing. We need to assist with providing technology resources to help bridge the digital divide. I know that's one of the things that's so hard right now, is not having our public computers available. And so I'm working on trying to find ways to make those accessible. We're also focusing on working with Santa Fe Public Schools to provide resources for teachers, students, and families. They the schools won't have their libraries open this year. And so I've been approached to figure out ways that we can help them. And so we're working with teachers to provide tutorials on how all of their students can access our resources. Also, I'm working with the staff at Santa Fe Public Schools to provide a seamless digital access to our ebooks so that kids wouldn't need a library card. They could just access through an account that works with the Santa Fe Public Schools. And then eventually what I would like to do, my goal is that we would have a library card associated with children's school ID so that any Santa Fe Public School student can have a library card. And so those are some of the goals that I'm working on with the schools. We'd like to get some laptops, hotspots, and tablets for checkout and for use within the library. So social distancing would be a little bit easier if you were able to have a laptop that you could use within the library. And then maybe planning for some outdoor laptop and device use until the weather turns cold, and hopefully we'll have our facilities ready to open by then. And so our next phase would be open for limited time browsing and picking up your books, and then public computers by appointment. We'd also like to have some pop-up libraries and activities within the community, especially areas of town that are more geographically distant for people to get to the library. We'd also are working with our senior services to try to bring some homebound services for seniors who need materials, and more technology classes, especially as people are starting to look for jobs and wanting to freshen up their skills. We've started on a branch refresh to update our furniture in all of the branches, and it's kind of been put on hold right now, not knowing what our situation will be with furniture and social distancing, but that is in the plans. Also, I've been in conversation with Sarah Boybe with the Fab Lab, and we would like to plan a Fab Lab at the Southside Library. And this would be different just than a regular makerspace, but it would also have some educational components and training where you could learn to use some high-tech materials and equipment. And then, of course, focus on more bilingual materials and outreach. We really need to work on those. And then planning for a library at Midtown is something that I think the city really should consider focusing on, because it's a tremendous opportunity and it's one of need. The Lafarge Library is a beloved library. It's very used. We could just have an amazing library for our community, that our community is so worthy of a space that's for everyone. So, and then of course, working with other resources to make a plan for more diverse library funding sources and sustainability. So that's just a quick update on some of the very few things we're doing. We're very busy at the library. I encourage you to come visit us and see our operation. The Curbside Services, a really fun thing to watch, and our staff, like I said, they're just amazing. They are so dedicated and positive, and they love serving our community. And I'm just really proud to work with them and proud to be the director of the Santa Fe Public Library. So with that, I'll open it up for questions. And thank you for having me here this evening.
Great, thank you. Thank you for your presentation and for all the work you've done under these challenging circumstances. I'm sure it's been rewarding in some ways and exhausting in others. So thank you for all that.
Thank you.
Do we have questions from the committee? Councilor Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No questions, just wanted to thank Maria for your thorough presentation and letting us know the ins and outs of what makes the library work, especially during COVID times. And I have to say, since you've started, your Facebook page is pretty phenomenal. All the aspects that you just reported have been on that page, and it's been so cool to watch over the summer to see some of the programming you're doing. And yeah, I think it's been pretty phenomenal. So thank you for that. And just look forward to seeing how this next phase will work for you all, and hoping that we'll have funding in the future so that you can be fully staffed as well.
Thank you.
Councilor Cassett Sanchez. I'm just going down the list here because I don't know whose hands went where.
Madam Chair, thank you so much, Maria, for being here. You know, I echo the sentiments of Councilor Villarreal of and Councilor Romero Worth of the incredible work that you guys have been able to do under these challenging circumstances. And I know in the parent groups that I'm a part of, everybody gets very excited when a new bilingual books and babies pops up. And there's really a lot of appreciation that is continuing. I'm very happy to hear that we're working on the public computer piece. That's something that I've heard from a few individuals. I'm curious with the pop-up libraries, is it a possibility to also include that technology aspect as well?
Yes, absolutely. That would be part of it.
Okay.
Checking out hotspots and maybe have some pop-up books where we can check out. So that's something that we're definitely thinking about, is how we can get technology out into the community. And so I applied for some grants. I'm still waiting to hear if we have received any funding, but hopefully we can find some funding to get the laptops, mobile labs out into the community.
Great, thank you so much. I'm really happy that that is part of the plan. I know that sometimes we think that libraries are just a place that you check out books, and they really are so much more. And I'm very happy to see how many of these pieces that you're bringing in and really creating these resources for our community, as well as the building blocks for so many of our children and the members of our community. So thank you for this work. I agree with Councilor Villarreal that, you know, we need to be looking at funding. You guys are 10 positions short. That's what I was doing when you thought I had a question, was counting
Yeah.
how many there are. And that I know that has been really a big challenge. And so we will continue to be looking for that funding for helping fill those positions. So thank you so much for all your work, and to your staff as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair and Councilor Sanchez. Libraries are the center of equity in a community, and we just really want to make as much available to our community as possible.
Great. Councilor Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I mean, this is fantastic. And so kudos to you and your team for just adjusting to life, to COVID. I know that it's changed the way you've had to deliver service, and it's been fantastic. We used the curbside checkout a lot this summer for our daughters, just to keep them reading and engaged, and no hiccups whatsoever. So hats off to you and your team on that, and congratulations on the receiving of the grants. I think it's very smart to reach out, look for what resources are available, and let's take advantage of that when those opportunities arise. I like the idea of, you know, that's kind of consistently being put out there regards to Midtown becoming the future of a library site. There is such a great opportunity there, and I think that we need to do everything we can to make that happen. And as others have said, you know, libraries need to be the community convening center, and utilizing technology such as folks are nowadays, it's evident that it's critical. And I think that with that mindset, Maria, we're set up for success. And as long as we can keep that path and look at how we can utilize the space as a community space, not just something that is to go check out books and maybe go study at, but more of a community convening center. I think we need to focus on that as well. But no questions, just wanted to tip my hat and thank you all for your team. And as Councilor Sanchez said, hopefully we can get those positions filled and get you up to capacity and deliver higher quality services. Not that it's not being given now, you guys are doing a fantastic job. So thank you all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Councilor Rivera, do you want to?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Maria, thank you for the presentation. It was very thorough. I'm glad to see the way you've adapted library services with COVID, and I assume once winter starts, you'll probably have to readjust and figure out what you're going to do at that point. So, but I'm confident after seeing what you've done so far that you'll be able to handle that easily.
First, you'll probably need to update your numbers since Councilwoman Villarreal asked you a question before the meeting started. So you'll have to update those numbers by one since you answered her questions. I had a question
We do it all the
about
time.
what's the difference so you told us about kids and then teenagers. So what's the cutoff in age for what you look at there?
Thank you, Counselor and Chair. So, there's a tween, a big focus on tweens. They're kind of the in-between. We look at usually 13 to 18 for teens. And, it just really depends on where teens fit in. But really the 13 to 18 age group, young adult type programming is as we look at it. And I'm looking at trying to find ways that we can bring more students into the library. Pre-COVID, we could have had some interns or things like that from the high school. And I'm still looking at ways possibly we can get some students that can help us with technology and working with seniors, people who need some assistance. But really, there's teen programming and then tween programming. It's those kids who want a little bit of their autonomy, but they're not quite teenagers. Does that answer your question?
It does. And then just curious, so there was a large group in the kids section, then the teens really dropped off, and then adult usage was high again. Is that pattern pretty much replicated from generation to generation, or at some point are we going to see the teens from a generation that have been low aren't going to want to continue library services when they become adults?
I think that we just have to get kids reading early and finding the love of reading and using those resources. Right now, our facilities aren't, our actual facilities aren't so great for teen use. And that's one of the things we've wanted to do at the Southside Library is kind of make more of a teen space that's their space where they can be and hang out. Video games, for instance, on the big screen. A lot of when we were working with the Teen Center, there was talk about they wanted programs that they couldn't get in their schools. So culinary and digital gaming and design, things like that. And so that's eventually where we want to go, is trying to bring those teens into finding programming that really will benefit them. And I think if we can move forward with the Fab Lab project, having this makerspace with a training component would be fantastic for teens to be a part of. And so I think, it's a part of getting kids interested in reading and introducing them to the library early, and then having them use the library. So we definitely need more teen focused programming. Many libraries have teen coordinators, librarians that specifically develop programs for teens. And, right now we're working with the staff we have, but eventually that's somewhere I would like to move towards, is to find more support for teen programming.
Well, thank you. I think with the Teen Center hopefully moving in soon across from the Southside Library, you working together, I think can help with some of that. The last question I had was, prior to COVID, we had been keeping track of statistics like county use, how many users of the library come from the county. Are we continuing that, or has it been too difficult now with how things are going?
So we actually implemented a new system that is a customer analytic tool, and it will help us provide maps of users, what users are actually using. So it will make it easier for us to track county users versus city users. And that's something that Kira and I have recently talked about, that we need to update those numbers. So I will be working on that and trying to identify where our users are coming from and getting more of that information, because we do have quite a large amount of county users.
Thank you. And again, appreciate the presentation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I just have a couple questions. So really appreciate the presentation, as I said. And on the challenge reading program that you did have you thought about, or is it maybe coming attractions, doing some sort of competition between, I don't know, adults and kids, or celebrities and kids, or, you know, something to kind of up the ante a little bit in some way?
Thank you, Chair and Counselor. Yes, so we just learned this new software, just implemented it, but it's something where we could have a challenge to the community, where if we read so many minutes, maybe somebody would make a donation to the library or another organization, or we could have challenges. So there's a lot of variability and fun ways that we can use the program. So I like the idea of, you know, some sort of celebrity challenge or something like that as well. So thank you for that idea, but we can do those things. And I was thinking a community reading goal would really be fun to add to our big read program, Santa Fe Reads program.
Yeah, okay, just curious. Also very curious, this committee heard a presentation about broadband access. And so, of course, that continues to be a need, and we're just, you know, we all are so reliant now on our internet connections. And I think you said your statistics, I mean, really the web use or the internet use has not gone down at all, which is really remarkable, given that the libraries have been closed. So you pretty much, people are utilizing the Wi-Fi from the parking lots. Is that how that's working?
That's correct. Thank you. Yes, if you drive up to the libraries on any given day, you'll see people in their cars accessing the internet. It's not the most, it's not the best, but it's definitely, we're providing service. And so one of the things I'm looking at is maybe some outside tables that we can add to some of the libraries outside, that people can use their computer more comfortably, their tablets, their phones. And so people can just drive up to the library, download what they need, send an email, and then leave. So, but people are using, you'll see people in the parking lots actually using the Wi-Fi services.
And so we're not doing anything like tents outside at this point or anything like that. I know some of the schools are utilizing.
Yeah, we have
But
not.
I know tents are expensive, so that's the flip side.
So I'm thinking maybe we start with some tables that would at least provide a more comfortable location. And just trying to brainstorm other ways that we can make services available to students that need to do their work.
Okay, and
But
then
it is a challenge.
yeah, and then I was really interested in the printing too. That piece of it. Is there do people pay for the printing? Is there a page limit? How does that work at the moment?
Right now, I think it's 50 pages limit. We have everything on our website, but you would just send an email with the pages that you needed printed, and it's 10 cents a page. It's what we charged when we were open. And we're just going to have a can that people can put their money in, and if they can't pay for it, we're, you know, trying to, you know, limit that. But if people have 10 cents that they can find and pay for their printing, we just want to make that service available. And the Friends of the Library actually pay for our copiers in our library.
Right. Yeah, and that's my next question is, tell me a little bit more. You said that Friends of the Library raises money for the programming of the libraries. Do you have a sense that you can share with the committee and the community about how much money we're talking about?
So this year, the Friends of the Library have budgeted $200,000 for the library in general. And so some of that is for programming, some of it is for books and materials, some of it is for our technology. And so really, I work with them each year to set a budget and identify priorities for the funding. But since we do not have funding for library programs per se, that's a big part of what the Friends do. So they'll pay our summer reading presenters or help us buy the craft supplies for our grab and go kits, things like that, that we would not have within our city budget to make available to the public.
Yeah, and I wonder if there's a way that we as counselors could help in that fundraising because as has been pointed out, the crucial role that the libraries play, and even more so now, as you've had to adapt to the new environment we're all in, and also just, parents and the community at large needing things. I mean, we all need stuff to do, right? So I think that's, I don't know.
Absolutely.
I'd
Thank
be
you.
open to exploring that if that's something that would be useful. Or
Yes, I absolutely appreciate that and can think of ways that the council can be involved. And, just by starting by promoting the Friends of the Library is a great way. Membership is a great way. And yes, I would love to work with you on thinking of more ways that the council can support that effort.
yeah, okay, that's something to explore, I think, for sure. And then just my last question was that the tech training you were talking about, people getting, ready to sharpen up their skills for jobs, that kind of thing. Can you elaborate a little bit about that? What, I mean, what are we, what specifically, I mean, are we talking about, learning software systems or yeah, just.
Thank you, Chair and counselors. So pre-COVID, we were starting to do more tech training. We had one, you can book time with a librarian so they can teach you how to use Google or Google Drive or any sort of a number of technology questions. If they did not know how to use their tablet, they could make an appointment. So that was going strong. Now we just walk people through over the phone if they need help with technology, but we would like more formalized training where we'd actually have classes with just a variety of technology tools and tips. Some could be provided by outside community partners. Some could be just librarian provided tech training. And so those are things that we will definitely continue to add as we can, and we have the staff capacity to be able to do that. There are some people who don't even know how to save files or export files or, just basic technology. And so those are really important as people are looking for jobs and utilizing basic digital literacy. And so basic digital literacy would be something we would focus on.
And do you guys partner at all with the community college in this area?
We have been developing more and more programs with the librarian at the community college, and it's one of the things that we'd like to work more with them. We've developed a pretty good relationship and we'll continue to work with them. We were even thinking about possibly a co-programming position where we could work together because we can benefit their students. One of the things we were going to do pre-COVID, we haven't finalized, is having a small collection at the college that students could check out for their kids or for themselves. And so we are developing more relationships with them.
Yeah, good. And I just was thinking about your multi-generational programming too. I mean, this might be a space where, you could connect young people with seniors and help, learn to use the technology. I think there's a big need for seniors needing help with technology, and certainly having young people who tend to be naturals at that sort of thing might be good synergies. So.
Thank you. Yes, that is one of the things that was brought to my attention, that there's a program in Albuquerque. I can't remember. It's called Teen Years, and they actually provide support to seniors. Teens are paid. And so I'm looking into that model to see if there may be a way we can bring some sort of program like that to Santa Fe. So more to come on those programs, but those are definitely core services and strategic direction areas that we would like to head towards and make more available.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Lots of exciting possibilities, lots of exciting work already going on. And as others have pointed out, as money, as our revenues recover and we're able to find more resources, certainly look forward to filling the holes in your organizational chart. So with that, if there aren't any more questions, thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to talking some more. So keep in touch, and would love to have you back, and continue to make sure that we're keeping abreast of what you're doing. So
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Okay, so with that, we will go to our first presentation, now our second presentation. All right, so we have Kira Ochoa here, and hold on, pulling this back up again. And Rachel O'Connor, who is with the county, and she's the Community Services Director at the county. And of course, we know Kira as our Community Services Director at the city. And they're going to talk about the city and county safety net responses. And take it away.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you
for being here.
Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen, and my counterpart at the county and I are going to walk you through some slides that have to do with community need at this time. So is everybody able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, so trying to give a portrait of what's going on. Everyone knows that we have a lot of needs right now. And so I pulled together some data from other sources. First of all, I just really want to thank Rachel for making the time to do this, and all her support as we've worked to collaborate on how to respond to some of these needs. So this is really just a snapshot from various data sources to give you a sense of what we're seeing in the community. And I know you all are experiencing from your constituents as well. In regards to housing, a couple of things. The New Mexico Coalition to End Homelessness has a coordinated entry system, and they have identified that there are 371 households that are currently homeless. That's 263 individuals, 45 families, and 41 young people ages 18 to 25. And that probably doesn't capture everyone, but one thing to note is that at this time last year, that number was 205. And so we've seen an increase in homeless households. We've got 141 people currently in our shelters and hotels in the city of Santa Fe. And we are working on a system where we have one unified waiting list, but currently individual agencies are holding, and some waiting lists, some not. There's more need than that represents as well. The Espanola Pathways Shelter, because this is a county, we're going to give you a portrait of county-wide data, has 17 people in their shelter since the pandemic, and it's a new shelter. And according to Joseph Montoya at the Santa Fe County Housing Authority, from March through July of 2020, this is a really interesting and concerning statistic. They had a 641% increase in past due rents for 2,000 people, and that for people currently in housing. So that much increase in people being late, and these are folks that are at generally about 30% of the median income. So people who have housing vouchers who are having trouble paying their portion of their rent. And then we have 2,000 people on waiting lists for affordable housing at the county right now. So that's a portrait of what we're seeing in housing needs. We've anecdotally, I get lots of calls in a day around people that are, even though we have an eviction moratorium, facing evictions and having to navigate all of that. In terms of food insecurity, I looked at the ISD Income Support Division data and just did a kind of quick look at from this month, from this year in April, there were 50% more applications for EBT for SNAP in Santa Fe County than there had been in April of the previous year. And that if we look at each month of the pandemic, you sort of see that an increase, dramatic increase in SNAP applications. Some of our providers have told us that they're seeing increased need. Kitchen Angels, that is a wonderful agency that delivers meals to homebound seniors that are needing special diets. They saw their client load increase 27% in the first 6 weeks of this pandemic. Food Depot, as everyone knows, the picture on the front is from that, their food distribution. They've given out twice as much food in the first half of the year as they did a year ago. And they've had to create the drive-through sites to deal with the demand. In terms of other social needs, we see domestic violence, very hard to get good data on this, but in speaking with Casa Esperanza, they currently have 29 women and children in safe shelter, which is an increase from their normal folks. And concerningly, they have 144 individuals and families that have been turned away in the last 5 months because they don't have places for them. They're sheltering folks in hotels and at the shelter. In terms of our utilities needs, I do have a call into P&M, but I worked with Shannon Jones's staff today, and they identified that they're seeing in the Santa Fe Public Utilities probably an approximately a strong increase in need and inability to pay bills, which they attribute to the pandemic. They saw an average of approximately 614 customers who didn't pay in February, and that shot up to 2,182 who didn't pay in May. And they are working with clients, they're working with customers on plans, but that's another kind of indicator, canary in the mine kind of indicator on what's going on for people. In terms of childcare, really hard to get good data on that, working on it. But in our own city after school program, which is shut down, we know that 150 families who needed that after school and out of times school care are not able to be served community-wide. Very few out of school, after school programs are operating at capacity. And of course, we're in constant conversations with the schools around the need to support students who are online when parents are working and what solutions are to that. There was a PED survey done recently. The results, as far as I know, are not in yet, but need has definitely increased exponentially for childcare as supplies decrease. On my own staff, I have 2 wonderful staff members, 2 who had just had a baby, and one of them, Anna Kale, her provider was lined up to take care of her baby and isn't able to do that. And so she's, her husband, who's a teacher, is looking at having to quit his job at the Santa Fe Public Schools because they don't have childcare. And I hope she doesn't mind me sharing that, but that's just a snapshot. And in terms of infant care, early childhood care, really tough right now, long waiting lists. Transportation, according to Director Wheeler, ridership on city transit is down 60% now. What does that mean? Of course, people aren't going to places because places aren't open, but in some cases that because they don't want to be in congregate situations on a bus, they may not be accessing things that they need to. And then I just looked at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that reports that in terms of, we think of, people being in arrears on their car payments, which they need to get around and get to jobs. We've seen that nationwide, people are filing 2.5 times more complaints that they're not receiving help in working on a payment plan with their auto loan. So I don't have any local data on repossessions and people losing their ability to operate their cars, but I suspect that it filters down locally. And then just in terms of general income support, we've seen a huge jump in our unemployment rate in Santa Fe County, a 4.4% unemployment rate in March, jumped to 13.5 in June in the county, according to the workforce development folks. And then that doesn't capture, of course, people that are not collecting or eligible for unemployment. We've got about 15,000 immigrant and mixed status families who are ineligible for federal stimulus check, according to SOMOS. And many of them we know from anecdotally and from our work in Connect, which Rachel will go into here shortly, are having a very hard time. So I'm sorry I don't have better news. There are wonderful things happening to address this need. And Rachel's going to talk about our Connect program, which is a joint county-city program that the county had started a few years back and invested quite a lot of time and funding into, and does give us some local data that I think is very interesting. Now, just keep in mind, Connect isn't capturing everyone in Santa Fe, but it's a very good slice of what's going on. And I know many of you know about it, so we won't go into great detail, but Rachel, I'll turn it over to you, and you can just tell me when you want me to move these slides regarding the Connect network.
Okay, thank you very much, and good afternoon. I appreciate you having me here, and the partnership that I have with the city on the Connect and other projects in Santa Fe County. I want to talk first just a little bit about the Connect network. I think most of you are probably familiar with what Connect does. It really has been a unique program that was started by Santa Fe County. Oh gosh, I want to say probably 4 years ago now, that connects people with needs relative to the social determinants of health. So the goal of the Connect program is to bring all the navigators across Santa Fe County together to work systematically to assist people in finding resources, whether that's food assistance, education, employment, certainly food and housing is the predominant need that people have presented with, both over time in the Connect network and also since the pandemic began back in March. I think, as you can see here, this is since April of 2019. We've served about 1,616 unique individuals. I think the best thing about Connect is that it is the service for the time. And I think Kira would agree, it's become a really handy tool during something like a pandemic because of two things. One is that early on, we added, and this was already planned, a public facing portal so that people could actually get on, apply for services, and be brought right into the program. And the second thing is, it really is about providing very basic needs in our community. And certainly during this public health crisis, the need for very basic services has been predominantly on our minds. I think whether we work for the city or the county, the Community Services Department has been tasked with trying to assist people in accessing services. We can go on to the next one, Kira. This is from March 1st to current, 865 individuals. This was really since we started the public facing portal. And you can get on to the Santa Fe County website or the City of Santa Fe website. You can fill out a very simple questionnaire. There are navigators ready to assist you in the needs that you have. And that has been incredibly gratifying, hopefully for the user and for the county to be able to provide basic services. At this point in time, I think, oh gosh, Kira, how many organizations would you say we have in the Connect program?
So I was trying to count up, we have 42. And we then added some recently as well. So I think 42 were solidly in the network, and then we added, I believe, about 13 additional for the pandemic.
So the majority of the contractors, whether it be through Santa Fe County or the City of Santa Fe, are participants in the Connect program. And what that means is that we have standardization across the region in terms of how we screen people and how we access services and funding, as well as a common IT system called Unite Us, which really comes in handy during these times. Kara, if you want to go to the next slide, that would be great. So I want to talk a little bit about what the county is doing to try to address the needs. And certainly it's similar to the kind of efforts that have come out from the city. I think that our first concern was about individuals who had a tendency to congregate. In Santa Fe County, that means our jail. It also means people who might be staying at homeless shelters. And I think Kira had certainly some foresight with regard to that. Santa Fe County, we generally put about 1.8 million for navigation services. We also have navigators that we fund internally. And then we have flex funds that can be accessed for really any need that arises in the process. But what we did was put out about $300,000 in funds for organizations to provide additional options for people that were in a congregate setting. So essentially to fund housing, Interfaith, Lifelink, St. Elizabeth Shelter, Esperanza Shelter. Again, we were also working in partnership with Espanola's Pathway Shelter. And like Kira said, organizations such as Solace are seeing significant changes in their service array. And so we have provided funding to them as well. These organizations are already part of the Connect network. So it makes us easy to amend their contracts, give them additional flexible funds so that they can meet the needs of really anyone who comes into the system. The other area, and I'm going to talk about this in just a minute, that the county has invested significantly is with the Food Depot and with YouthWorks. We're providing significant funding at multiple locations in the county. And providing groceries, individual meal delivery, and then bulk meal delivery out in the community at multiple locations. And I think I have somewhere in here a little bit of data on what that looks like. Kara, do you want to go to the next one?
Sure.
The other thing is, and you know, Kira and I have talked about this extensively. We both have interest and see the need with regard to individuals that are homeless, as well as people that may have behavioral health needs. Starting in March, we had a change at the county where we had a new provider come on board with New Mexico Solutions. They're providing mobile crisis team support that could no longer be provided face-to-face. And so what we did was repurpose that team so that it can provide behavioral health supports at the Midtown Shelter or at Consuelo's Place. I'm sorry, I still refer to it as it first began. And they've been very active there. They reported to us today that they had 767 telephonic calls to residents staying at the Midtown. They provide crisis support services. They sometimes provide therapies. They're doing virtual groups on a daily basis. So they're actively providing support. It's really been timely for us to have a sense of purpose. We are looking to, or we are partnering with New Mexico Solutions to start a crisis center as well, which will be opening up in January. We also provide some funding to the New Mexico Coalition to End Homelessness for case management and other supports at Consuelo's Place. Part of what we were concerned about and that we have really noticed during the pandemic is the number of people in the city of Santa Fe or Santa Fe County that don't have Medicaid. And a lot of people that were receiving services at Consuelo's Places did not have Medicaid. We are really emphasizing a couple things. One is general case management, and the second thing is getting people enrolled into Medicaid so that when we identify that there is a behavioral health need or a physical health need, or a combination of the two, people can have a funding stream to access a whole array of services that might be necessary. And then we're also funding YouthWorks for meal delivery at Consuelo's Place. I think that World Central Kitchen was incredible here in Santa Fe starting out. We are looking at currently partnering with YouthWorks so that we have a seamless system for continued individual meal delivery in the county. And I think just rounding up meal delivery, of course, we both have senior services programs. We're providing about 800 meals a day through our senior services program, and about 2,500 grocery boxes have been delivered across the city and county of Santa Fe. 380 grocery boxes were delivered to households with homebound individuals. When we first started looking at what the needs were for people in terms of food, we had this gap where people were either required to isolate, or perhaps maybe a person with a disability who did not have transportation to a individual food bank. We have the ability through the Connect program to pull out that information, and our staff deliver individual meal services to people that are homebound. And we're looking at partnering with the youth. Well, we are partnering with YouthWorks for about 15,000 meals to continue food services at Consuelo's Place. And as we move forward, I think that, the county will continue to, with the CARES Act funds, much like the city, populate the flex fund ability of the Connect program to try to meet people's needs individually moving forward.
Thank
So
you,
Carol,
Rachel.
yeah.
Thank you very much. So, our work on addressing safety needs has been very coordinated and very much complementary, I think. We are in the Connect program really have retooled all of the Children, Youth Commission and Human Services safety net needs contracts, which is about 2,230,000 annually, are now considered Connect contracts. And of that, our staff time is about 198,000 in salaries and benefits annually. So the total amount that the city is now really devoting to Connect is 2.4 million annually. With this, the governing body's authorization of emergency funds in the COVID times, we were able to infuse that network with $275,000. 240 went for the flexible funds. That goes for people's rent, people's childcare needs, car payment. And 35,000 went for additional staffing at the interfaith shelter. Interfaith, very committed to getting the census down in their shelter, is essentially doing support for the people that are staying in hotels and needed additional staffing. And then in addition to those 42 agencies that we had in the Connect network, the city contracted with the organizations you see here in green to get them flexible funding and logins into the Unitas system. When a navigator serves somebody in the Connect network, as Rachel said, it's a standard process. Although each agency serves people a little differently, we can kind of boil down community need into some of those basic social determinants that we began the presentation with. And there's a screening tool, a standardized screening tool that all of these agencies use. That information goes into the Unitas platform, and then the referrals that are made within that platform and what happens to folks can be tracked. And on the administrative level, feedback is provided to the agencies so they know how they're doing in terms of meeting referrals and they give us feedback on how the clients are doing in terms of getting the needs met. So we were able to add quite a few to the network with those flexible emergency funds, and we hope that we will continue those relationships. The goal with the Connect program has always been every agency that's serving people in Santa Fe could be part of this Connect network, so that there's really an any door for people in need, and they can be connected and referred to agencies that may be specialists in housing, specialists in food, but wherever they walk in, they can be served. And so in addition to that Connect funding, everyone here knows, the Midtown Shelter, also known as Consuelo's Place. Actually, I don't know that this body is familiar with that change. That's really just the name of the LLC that the New Mexico Coalition to End Homelessness started in order to be able to bring on some additional staffing, which was made available from the Department of Affordable Housing and their CDBG CARES Act funding to that coalition. And they're now, as you know, providing the director some case management services along with the county case manager and some front desk staff to bolster up the services at Consuelo's Place. And I'll just say, Consuelo's Place is now really conceived by the board and other partners as potentially a virtual organization, because we don't anticipate staying at Midtown forever. We're looking at, what kind of case management, what kind of support do people in this situation need, whether they're staying in a hotel or perhaps beyond into some transitional housing facility to really to get what they need and get housed permanently and stay housed. The city's also provided increased funding for rental assistance to the coalition that goes out into other providers from Alexandra Ladd's Housing Trust Fund. And then we've provided additional money out of those emergency funds to YouthWorks for meal delivery, both at Consuelo's and also at the hotel guests of Interfaith. So lots of funding going out to meet community need. I didn't mention here in this presentation the foundation funding, and that is another element of all of this. The COVID relief funds that Santa Fe Community Foundation and other foundations are gathering. We are in conversations and working with foundations to really use that funding as an opportunity to help us get a better handle on how many people need housing, how many people are food insecure, et cetera, so that we can meet the moment and look at the needs of the community. So together we will try to tag team this last slide. As Rachel alluded to, we are both departments in the city and the county have looked to increase funding for Connect partners to provide more navigation and flexible funding for housing, food, transportation, our childcare, and other support that is needed that are related to the social determinants of health. That's such a buzz phrase, the social determinants of health. But the other thing about this project is keep in people's minds, it's a jail diversion and an ER diversion project, because that's a really high cost solution for somebody not being housed. That's a really high cost intervention for somebody that didn't have enough food and therefore fell out of dizziness, a senior, et cetera. So the social determinants of health, if we address those social determinants, we're going to save our system overall in any time, and in COVID times ever more so. We are also looking to increase relief for immigrants and mixed status families. And then Rachel, I think you want to talk about the county's plans for funding on the housing front, the third bullet there. You're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Can you hear me now? So we actually are looking at multiple ways to promote housing and affordable housing. During the pandemic, I think a fair amount of our CARES Act funds were actually devoted towards Connect specifically for housing, and also in working with Joseph for mortgage and rental assistance. So, if you go back to the counties, whether you go to the behavioral health strategic plan or you go to our health action plan or any of the multiple plans that we have, it's a continued need for housing. And I think now is the time that we actually have enough funding devoted from both the city and the county to really make a dent in that. And I think that's the hope moving forward, because as much support as we provide in other areas, if you don't have a home, it just makes life so much more difficult. So thank you, Kira.
Thanks. And then that was a coordinated effort on the part of the Department of affordable housing at the city and the county's housing authority in terms of thinking about the overall need in the community. And so that really, that funding, the CARES Act funding, has gone to county and will be shared because a substantial part of the number of people that the county serves reside in the city of Santa Fe. And that is true too, Rachel, for this funding for small businesses that was part of the ask for CARES Act. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so as there was a joint application that went forward for grants for small businesses that included, it was in the county's request, but included partnership with the city and I believe with Edgewood, the city of Edgewood, for small business grants. We actually have a meeting scheduled tomorrow because probably like the city, the county is scrambling to determine exactly what was funded within our application and how quickly we can move forward. It's a lot of money coming in fast. We know we need to spend it responsibly and on time, but we're probably, of everything that we got, the two main things, or the three main things that we will be funding going forward, and there's a whole host of other things, but include the grants for small businesses, the Connect program, and the housing. That made up just a huge proportion of the county's application. And as Kira mentioned, both of those are in partnership with what the city put forth.
And Rachel, you alluded, you mentioned the Behavioral Health Crisis Center, but do you want to talk a little bit about the state of play there?
You know, I'll just mention it briefly. We were funded several years ago to develop a behavioral health crisis center. We're in the final stages of renovating the building that will house both the detox center that Santa Fe Recovery Center runs, will occupy about 40% of the building. It's going to be a significantly expanded service. We're hoping to take our detox services from a socially enhanced model to a medical model so that we can provide both services through Santa Fe Recovery Center. And then the other half will be a behavioral health crisis center. And we expect it to be done late October, and for us to start providing services there through New Mexico Solutions and the county and the recovery center, hopefully in January. It'll be a massive expansion of services. And we're hoping by that time we can provide on-site services. The mobile crisis team will also operate out of the crisis center location.
Thank you, Rachel. And, you know, we've thought a lot about at the city when people come into that center, which is going to be such an asset in the community, and are housing insecure or should not go back to where they live or don't have a place to live, what happens? And that was actually a lot of the impetus for sort of defining this LLC Consuela's place, because we will need, and we're looking at other options for where folks could go to get stabilized after the crisis center and continue to receive that behavioral health support. In general, of course, the city is heavily focused on housing for that kind of transitional housing, but also for long-term affordable housing. And so we've got a number of requests in. We put our request in with CARES Act structured around some housing solutions, and we're working out, as Rachel said, and obviously we get input from you all on how we get those funds out in the community in the most effective way. You know, CARES Act is one small point in time right now, and we have these longer term goals. I think what happened for us in the community services departments was that the stuff we've been working on forever just became more important and relevant and necessary and urgent. And so we're continuing forward many of those ongoing efforts and ramping them up. You heard from our amazing library division director She's thinking so much about how to support youth and the schools at this time, as is John Munoz in the Recreation Division, in terms of the youth programming that we're going to be needing to put out to support schools, whether it's online or whether it's in some form in person, and how to do that, and how we need to look to fund those very important childcare needs. It's beyond childcare. It's really supporting education for the youth at this really tough time. And I know the county is also looking at that as well. So Rachel, if you want to close us out talking about that last bullet.
Sure. So the county just, the county is interested in beefing up our services to youth. And in fact had tagged this year as the year to do so. However, given the COVID activity that has occurred and the current pandemic, we've kind of revamped things. We run a teen court program. We've decided to fund some additional behavioral health services for youth because you know, we have many youth who are significantly isolated during this time period, or who may be experiencing emotions that they're not accustomed to. I mean, there's just a whole variety of different behavioral health needs that have cropped up during the pandemic. We funded team builders. They are a provider that used to exist in Santa Fe County. They are starting to exist again. We're delighted because they're going to be providing some services both for identified youth in the Santa Fe school system and for youth who come to the Teen Court program. We also are putting out an RFP and have an RFP out right now for substance abuse prevention services. And we are working to put together a package with the public schools and look forward to that coming out, hopefully in the next couple of months as well.
Thank you, Rachel. And with that, I'll stop sharing and we can stand for any questions.
Great, thank you for that presentation. And I think it'll be, it lays a good foundation for us as we move into the conversations about the CARES funding that we did receive and how we put that to use in the community. So to meet the very needs that you identified early and have been working on. So Councilor Rivera, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. O'Connor, Ms. Ochoa, for a great presentation. What I did want to ask is there are many organizations throughout the city. The one that comes to mind because I work there is Christus, that provide navigation services for their patients, whether it's food, housing, whatever. Do we work together with those groups, or is each navigation services reaching out to the food depot from different places?
Chairman, Councilor Rivera, Christus has sat on our advisory board for the Connect program since the very beginning. It's always a challenge to coordinate the coordinators, but I think we've got some very good news recently that after a long conversations, they obviously recognize the value of the project. A lot of it has to do with the relatively small project compared to how they operate, right? They're a large organization, but they do, as you mentioned, have a care coordination team. They have a HUGS, high utilizer group. And so Rachel, can you talk a little bit about recent developments regarding Christus's participation in Connect?
So I think that Christus is coming on board. Both Christus and Presbyterian are planning on coming on board and being full partners in Connect. And our staff, Jennifer Romero and Elizabeth Peterson, have been working hard to see that happen. Like Kira said, it's been a long-term goal. And we have worked in other capacities with navigators at Christus because they have a similar goal that we have, which is to prevent rehospitalization for people that are leaving the hospital. And so it's important that whether they link into community-based navigation or into our navigation system, that partnership's just crucial.
Do we share a list of services that are available between all the navigators? That way, if there's behavioral health needs that the hospital can provide that maybe Connect Care doesn't, that we have a list and vice versa?
Yeah, so but one of the things that comes along with the CARES net or with the navigation network that is through Connect is that there's a common system used for resources, and that's called Share. And so everyone has access to it. CARES actually probably can speak more elaborately about the Share network than I can, but it is a common resource tool for all the navigators that exist in Santa Fe.
Chairman, the Chairwoman, Council Rivera, the other Share is uploaded into the Unitas platform, which is the care coordination software system that all the navigators used. And so if a navigator, and Unitas is not only a data tracking system, but it's a tool for the navigators, and it's meant to be a very useful tool. So as a navigator finds out somebody has a need for housing services, and maybe they don't know about LifeLink, maybe they're new to the community, they can pull that resource up in the platform, in the Unitas platform, and make that referral. And one of the thorny parts about this whole thing has been that shared software system. It's integratable with hospital like Epic and other hospital EMRs. And that was a large part of why we sought to procure this particular software, because of its integratability with a lot of other larger databases. We have yet to get there, but we have a dream of taking over the world, or at least Santa Fe County and Santa Fe City, with this project, because imagine if everybody in need was in here. I mean, it's powerful in terms of them getting what they need, in terms of us understanding the scope of the needs. And we're so excited that Christus and Presbyterian are ready to take the leap and join. La Familia Medical Center has been a partner, a long-term partner. This doesn't mean that everybody each agency serves is in this platform either, because everybody else has other funders to serve as well at the state or other levels. So it's in some sense a pilot project, we hope actually, for the state of New Mexico, because part of what happened when the Affordable Care Act came on board was they never dictated which system we were all supposed to use. And so that created this kind of Tower of Babel. And that's been a challenge, but I think we're getting closer. And I'm sorry, I am speaking elaborately on it because I'm a bit of a wonk about it. So I'll stop now. I hope that answers your question.
It does, thanks. And I'm glad to see and hear that everyone's working together. So that's the most important thing. So thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilor Cassett Sanchez, you have your hand up.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you very much, Kira and Rachel, for being here, for presenting on this. I had a couple questions. Do we have a navigator embedded in the schools at all, or via community in schools?
Chair, Councilor Cassett Sanchez, through schools programs, yes. So communities and schools, we have, I believe, 2 navigators, 1 city funded and 1 county funded at communities and schools that works in the schools. Teen parent program, I believe we have 2 navigators, 1 county, 1 city, through the Office of Student Wellness, and Adelante program also at the schools. We are in close conversation with the schools who around a truancy prevention project that they have going, and how to make school staff who might be good navigators, how to get them involved in the network. What is a navigator? It's kind of a general term. I always think of it, the way I describe it, as a person who helps the people. So, it could be a school secretary. How many of us went to schools where those school secretaries knew everything about us, and they knew when a family was in trouble, and they might be the navigator, and that's okay. Or it might be a social worker, it might be a community health worker. So yeah, we're excited about this. Superintendent Garcia is aware of the project. Her staff is working with us, and we had intended to, one of the ways we can encourage participation in the network without necessarily major funding investment is to provide logins to the Unitas system for partners who are interested, and the schools had expressed interest in that. And then they had to stop for a minute and figure out how the heck to respond to the moment. But I'm confident we'll get back on track with that project as well.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. I'm very eager, as oftentimes schools are the ones that notice, when kids are showing up without jackets or don't have anything to eat, or now, we have so many kids that are on free or reduced price meals, and definitely an opportunity to really link people in to see if there are other places that we can be of assistance. The other question I have, and Kira, I know that you and I have discussed this offline a couple times, and I'm curious if there's been any more movement on that, is looking at almost an evaluation piece for the individuals that are coming through the programs as they get connected. Are we able to really track and see how we might be moving them to areas where this assistance is not needed, where we're able to get them on their feet? And I'm curious if there has been any more development in that area.
Chair, Councilor Casas-Sanchez, in fact, Rachel can speak to this. There is a contract that's been in place for evaluation of Connect with a group called Pacific. I always forget what PIRE stands for. Rachel, do you want to speak to that?
For research and evaluation.
Thank you. And where are we on that? They've been looking at the network, suggesting performance measures, I mean, I'll say, there is a way in which we have that embedded into the system, because we already can say, was a referral met and made? What happened to that person? When you close out a case in this software, there's a way to say they got housed, they didn't, we're not quite there yet. And that's probably the conversation you're referring to. But in terms of how this project actually works, what are its pros, cons, challenges, I think PIRE is fairly far along in having a sense of that. Rachel, can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, I just can add a little bit to that. There's no sense having navigators if people aren't getting services. And the evaluation really is in place to see how fruitful those connections are. Because if we make a referral, the question is, does it get picked up and acted upon at the other end if we have navigators who are working cooperatively towards one client, which we generally do. I think evaluation is seeking to answer that question. We're really in the early stages of collecting data, but we're really aggressively pursuing that. And I think we can answer some of that question with the data we have now in terms of how fruitful it is. I think part of what is, the upside of the CARES Act funding is that it gives us a massive amount of resources, to assist people. And the downside is that it ends in December. And so trying to figure out a way to measure that success during that time and move forward, I think is really super crucial. And it's at a time now where we haven't been collecting data for that long. So it's really appropriate for us to do intensive measurement of how effective our outcomes is. And I think it couldn't be a more perfect time to do that.
I would just add that we are collecting data on ER use, jail utilization, self-reported health status, and the PIRE team has been working with us to figure out how to get that collected most effectively without interfering, with minimum interference in the relationship that the navigator builds with the person. Because it's not about the data. I mean, it doesn't mean a thing if it ain't got that heart, of the relationship. And so it's always a push-pull, but yeah, it is a good time, as Rachel says, to really get our hands around the fact that, Kathy Etrie, director of mission at Christus, tells this amazing story of the guy who, cost the hospital system. Councilor Rivera, you may have had it better than I. I'm close to, I think it was up in the six figures annually, $700,000 a year, because he kept coming back to the ER and nobody could figure out what to do with him. And it turned out that he had bed bugs, and he needed a $7 mattress cover, and that solved the problem. So the flexible funds that allow for purchases like that at organizations, that's a really small number. Sometimes it's a rent payment. It's the and thens of poverty that really get you, right? It's when you just can't make that payment and then you can't get to work and then you lost your job. And if we're funding agencies so rigidly that they can't respond and the navigators are helping them can't respond, that's not going to work. That doesn't work. So the part of the spirit and the value of the Connect program is to have very flexible deliverables based contracts with sort of sensible uses of flexible funds. And part of the evaluation needs to be, how much did spending $20 on this person save us down the line in terms of a cost benefit? And we're seeing it on the ground. It'll be great when we can get some aggregate data on it.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, I absolutely agree that those are a lot of the pieces that we're looking to solve, as well as looking to see as outcomes. When we close a case, is there ever a follow-up? So, you know, case closed, and then in a year, is there a follow-up if we haven't heard back and saying, how are you now? Have we?
Yes, Chair Counselor Cassett Sanchez. Yes. So also, it's a little complex, but in Unite Us, when you close the case, you may be closing the piece of the case that was about housing, but you may still be working with the person on food security or things like that. And it's really agency specific. I think the evaluators are building in that 6 months follow-up, 12-month follow-up, because we don't have, I think one of the challenges of the program is that we do give agencies a lot of leeway in how their navigators work and function. We give them a lot of flexibility. That's both a pro and a con. So agencies themselves may follow up because that's what they do, and some don't. In general, we're working to build in a somewhat more standardized way of following up, so we can look at a cohort of people and how they progressed over time and how they're doing in terms of their health after a year or 2 years because they had this service or these set of services.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm happy to hear that. I also know that in some of this work, when I've spoken with people, they sought out services and then they were okay for a little while and then for some reason didn't seek them out again, which is why I want to make sure that follow-up is occurring. So thank you. And last question, we talked about a lot of different funding sources. How is our funding and our need matching up at this moment?
It's not, in my opinion, sorry. I just think that, well, and I don't know that can be completely a data driven answer right now, because we don't, as I said, we don't know the scope. We don't know if the people that came to this agency who are not in Unite Us are duplicated in Unite Us. So we don't know if it's 250 families in Santa Fe right now that are suffering terribly. And if we just put a lot of resources to them, if we'd be okay. But when I look at all those data points at the beginning of the presentation around unemployment, around increases, I had some numbers I didn't put in around increased applications for Medicaid, which is a symptom of having lost your insurance. Sometimes we're facing a tsunami of need, and I don't see how local funding sources alone can address that need. Thank goodness for the CARES Act funding that we've had. As you recall, when this body granted the emergency funds of $550,000, Community Services got, as I mentioned in the presentation, $240,000 for flexible fund needs. It was spent in 2 months.
We have similar issues here. And, as Kira said, I think it will be extremely difficult to meet the totality of the need. But I think the CARES Act funding, it'll make a significant dent in it. It's just so crucial at this point in time. And like I said earlier, my main concern is, and we're already talking about this here, is January. And because, a lot of these needs, the pandemic, as we all know, just showed us the problems we already had in a lot of ways. And, you know, we're going to have to gear up to continue to meet a lot of those needs once the time period is over. They've just become more acute. And certainly a lot of people are unemployed that haven't been in the past because of the pandemic, but it's also, it's just exacerbated what already existed, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. And you know, definitely keep us updated on how that funding is, how quickly it's drying up. I think that that'll be important for us to continually think about and let us know how we can support in looking for alternative funds. And then of course, you know, we'll see how the city recovers and when we recover. I'm sorry, I did have one more question. It had to do with, I know right now we have a moratorium on evictions. And one thing that I am concerned about, and when I've been speaking with a lot of the workers at some of these agencies that work with families, is what happens when that moratorium ends and all of a sudden rent is due. And I'm curious if that's, I know that right now we're kind of in crisis response, but is that a conversation that we've been looking at, a problem that we've been starting to look at solutions for?
Chair, Councilor Cassett Sanchez, certainly it's been a topic of conversation. Director Alexander Ladd and myself have been looking at that. You know, the other issue there is some landlords can't afford to not collect rent, and they're going to be in trouble as landlords. So looking at maybe more upstream solutions to that, the moratorium's kind of a Band-Aid. I think if more funding comes available, we may look at bulk payments to keep people housed. Other funding sources are coming in, or other federal funds are coming into agencies like LifeLink in large dollar amounts. So hopefully those programs can look at, you know, maybe paying more than just 1 month's rent. But, you know, the longer term needs for affordable housing in Santa Fe are part of what we continue to try to address here. And, you know, I think, you know, just making sure that homelessness is prevented on the front end. So it's like, you don't want to end up in the ER, you don't want to end up homeless, you know, and it's a similar goal. So I think we've tried to be concerted in the way we proposed spending CARES Act funding as a team at the city. I know the county did similarly, so that yes, we're meeting immediate needs, and hopefully in doing so, we're also legitimately and allowably within the funding, putting stakes in the ground and laying tracks for longer term solutions. Rachel, I don't know if you wanted to add to that in terms of moratoriums. And our legal team has been very responsive on an individual level at the city when people are having trouble, is my understanding. So we're referring cases up to the city attorney's office under the direction of Ms. McSherry, and her staff is responding when landlords are improperly trying to evict people. But it would be great to have a person at the city who just does that all the time and is the advocate for, you know, renters in the city.
Absolutely, yeah, that is very true. That would be really a really advantageous role that we could have. Put it on our list of our wish list that I actually do want a physical copy of someday. Well, thank you both very much for your presentation and for sharing this information and for all this work. I know that these are issues that were already complex and underfunded and under-resourced, and as you both mentioned, now even more so. So I know that it's a lot to take on, and I really appreciate all of the work that you have both done and the coordination between the city and the county on this effort. Thank you.
Okay, great. It's a little before 7. I just want to draw our attention to the clock. You know, I don't want to cut anybody off. Definitely, these are important things. But let's kind of pay attention to time as we're closing up this. So Councilor Villarreal, you have your hand up.
Should have said that earlier, like an hour ago.
I know.
Hey, Kira and Rachel, thank you for your presentation and sharing your wisdom with us. And I just had a couple of questions. I hope are sure, I think they are, but my other job as in the nonprofit sector, we've been asking, there have been nonprofits asking us for support for childcare. And so I'm wondering if, what are your thoughts about that as it relates to the CARES Act funding? And if there's going to be funding from that source that could support that? And how does that even look if there aren't really caretakers, childcare people in that industry that are even working full time and at full capacity? So have you all kind of coordinated with other groups about this? And
Chair, Councilwoman Villarreal, yes, that's a huge need. Connect does allow those flexible funds to be used for childcare, and that's a plus if it's available. I know that CYFD is working a lot on programs where they can fund family caregivers to do childcare, because obviously the need for a pod in this time is it's a different, there's a different set of needs. In terms of like bigger scale programming, I think at the city anyway, we're looking very gingerly at that. The recreation division is going to be opening 20 slots at GCC to anyone of any income. We're joining forces with in community services with our youth specialists and their youth specialists to create one program that is be needs-based, but it's a small program. Whether it can be scaled up with additional CARES Act funding, that is something that is a possibility. But again, we also have to look at how safe that is, both for staff, for kids, for families. And so I'd say we're very ginger about it right now. And we're working closely with our community partners to understand their needs around what they can do with expanded childcare capacity to hopefully help them if they're prepared to take those children in to do so.
okay, so
Recreation division substantially asked for the portion that would go toward those kinds of programs in the CARES Act request for the city, but we'll have a presentation on that soon, I believe, and John
Great.
can
That's
more.
good to know. If we have groups or nonprofits that are asking about that, should we direct them to connect, or I'm just not sure where to direct people when they ask about childcare support?
If they're nonprofits looking for operational support, I would say right now you could direct them to the Santa Fe Community Foundation COVID Relief Fund. We're not quite set up for that. But certainly I'm open, anyone can talk to me and Julie Sanchez, who's back from maternity leave, the issue anytime. And we like to collect, information about community needs and provider needs, even if we don't have the funding source right then, so we get a portrait of what we could do. We're in a lot of conversations weekly about this topic. That's all I can say.
Okay.
I don't know if you have anything to add on that.
And then the other question I had is based on, well, that's one piece of it, but how are you all going to then prioritize the CARES Act funding, given that it has a short time frame? It has to be spent by December. And what is your kind of methodology for thinking about how to direct it? I mean, I know you all wrote what you were thinking, but when it comes down to it, you're going to have to like put the numbers to the actual programs or, initiatives. So is there kind of a methodology for that?
So, Madam Chair, Counselor, I can speak just briefly, and I want to double back on your earlier question. We did include funds for childcare in our CARES Act proposal. We're not exactly sure what mechanism we're going to use to distribute those funds, but they are there. So just an FYI. We're still taking stock in terms of what we have in the Connect program currently, what the CARES Act funding gives us. We will, I think your question is kind of what's the mechanism for distribution of those funds. At the county, We have existing contracts. We are meeting with all our partners tomorrow to talk about what the needs are and the available funding. And we will distribute those on a contractual basis based on the needs and the priorities that we're seeing currently through Connect. And, you know, there may be some partners that we can bring on that are additional partners, but right now, what we're seeing is food and housing. And a lot of people have been working on food and housing. I mean, it's been the city, the county, the Food Depot, there's been a whole group across the board. And we pretty much have it down at this point. So I think that in terms of that, we will put as much flexible fund into the Connect program that we can, with the goal of meeting the housing need and the food need. And that's where we'll start, is my guess. Now, the small business loans, will have a more strict application process.
And Madam Chair, Councilwoman Viadel, I'll just echo that in the Community Services Department, we're looking at our existing network and fusing that with the flexible funds. Those funds go directly to individuals and individual needs, and so that's our priority. And then, there's another process for the entire pot of money that I think the city is undergoing, and we'll get more information to this Quality of Life Committee, I believe, very, very soon on that.
Yeah, so I just want to say we have scheduled for the next Quality of Life Committee meeting on September 16th time to get into this. And by then we should have a proposal from staff about how those funds can be best utilized.
Great. Just one more question about when you talked about other partners that are out there, they're not necessarily being funded through your existing network, but they're out there and they were created because of the emergency needs. And I'm just wondering how you all are coordinating with grassroots groups like the Santa Fe Mutual Aid. And then there's some other smaller ones, but they really have good intentions. And I'm just wondering if there's a way that has a better coordination effort, or I don't know. You tell
Madam
me.
Chair, Councilwoman Viadel, one of the nice things about the Connect project is that the county, it began as a health, the procurement for the services is done under healthcare exemption, which means that if you are legitimately part of a health and human services network, you don't have to jump through a lot of procurement hoops. Of course, emergency procurement with CARES Act will be a possibility as well. So we can add partners as identified as needed, as we did when we got those emergency funds, and we added all those, I think it was 13 agencies. So and I believe it's Earth Care that works closely with the Santa Fe Mutual Aid Society and a large infusion of flexible funds and started participating in the United network. So that's absolutely possible. And nice thing is it doesn't have to be a lengthy procurement process. As long as they're willing to participate in the way we screen people, the way we include them in the software systems. And we have special exceptions for groups that are protected that don't want to have their data in there so that they can still be served.
Good to know. Thank you. That's all I have. Thanks, ladies.
Call me. I mean, basically, if you're serving people in Santa Fe and you need assistance, it is a good time to be in touch, and we'll make sensible decisions based on who's being served, and we have committees that are working together to do that.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, Councilor Garcia, you do not have your hand up, but just quick opportunity before we wrap up.
Quickly, thank you, Kara and Rachel. Appreciate all the information. It's great to see such a strong collaboration between the city and county. Keep it up.
Thank you.
That's all I got, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Great. Yeah, no, I would echo that. I think it's great to highlight some of these areas where the city and county are working really directed and focused and part of a team. And I think there are lots of examples of that And so it's wonderful to have an opportunity to dive into that and to understand better the ways that we do collaborate and how that benefits the whole community. So thank you. Thank you for being here tonight, and we'll be talking more very soon. So thank you. Thank you, Rachel.
Have a nice evening. Thank you.
You too. All right. So really quickly, we will go down. Let's see. Of course, now I can't open my thing. All right, here we go. We need matters from staff. Jennifer, do you have anything for us?
No, I don't have anything tonight.
Great. Matters from the committee. Okay, matters from the chair. Oh, just got kicked out of PrimeGov. So it's a good thing. Looks like it's time to adjourn. Our next meeting is Wednesday, September 16th. Thank you all. Really appreciate your questions tonight and the presentations that we've had. So thank you. Have a great evening.
Night, everybody.